Hello, everybody. Welcome to our talk today. My name is David Coyle. I work as a senior transformation consultant here in CoachHub. CoachHub, we are a global leader in digital coaching solutions. And our vision and mission at CoachHub is to democratize coaching and make it available for your people at all levels. I'm joined today by Sarah Henson of DeBeers, and we're going to talk all things change management and new leadership in the new paradigm in the post-pandemic world. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, thank you, David. So as David said, I work for DeBeers. I've been there for a year and a half-ish. Previously was with another division of DeBeers called Element 6, where I was head of talent at DeBeers. I look after learning and leadership development, and I sit within a broader talent team. So DeBeers is a business that spans the full value chain and is going through some interesting challenges, having 38 years of history. So interesting place to be right now, given everything that is happening in the world.
100%. So Sarah, to start us off, can you share some insight around the work that you're doing to help DeBeers pivot through the pandemic?
Probably one of the most challenging things that we faced was there's a level of leadership. I mean, all leaders were very massively impacted, and in some instances, it just sort of impacted in a way that was just not good for who they were and how they were trying to live their lives. But in particular, there was a sort of level of leadership within the business, and we call them the Band 4s. They sit just below Exco. I'm sure every organisation has that level of leadership, and they in particular were very severely impacted. So they were a real immediate need. So we and add to that we were actually having to, again, like a lot of other businesses, we were having to restructure the organisation. In some instances, and probably also like a lot of other organisations, the pandemic actually provided us with a perfect excuse slash opportunity to do something that actually needed to happen. So there was
like an accelerator.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? That actually, even within some seemingly disastrous circumstances, there are opportunities that if you could be alive to that, you can grab those and you can actually do something with them. So we really needed to accelerate some transformation. We needed, sadly, to lose some headcount cost in order to navigate the year, because DeBeers, spanning the full value chain, was kind of getting hammered at every point, from mining through to B2B sales, through to consumer sales. So there was a huge amount of effort put into what that looks like. The implications of that were there were leaders who were having to have very, very tough conversations, and actually what they really needed was the opportunity to reflect on how best they were going to do that. So the change management program was actually, more than anything else, was aimed at helping leaders have meaningful and authentic conversations. It's still ongoing. We've not got it right. We are a long way from being experts at change management, and actually one of the things that highlighted to us was the need to get some change management expertise, and not Prince 2 and Gantt charts, but actually people who really understood something around the psychology and the conversations you have during change. So really reflecting upon the human aspect of change, and therefore coaching has been increasingly such a central pillar to helping people grapple with change, and we've really tried to put it at the heart of a lot of the change management work we've done. So not just formal coaching, but coaching style of conversations. So there's sort of two sides of coaching. I have a coach, somebody coaches me. Also, I'm a leader, and I need to be able to have conversations that are not command and control, but are coaching style, engaging conversations.
So from starting the change management program till now, what kind of changes have you actually seen within the organization as a result of the change management program?
So there's been some really interesting appetite for coaching. So I should give you a context around DeBeers and coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So DeBeers is, as I said, it has an incredible legacy. It has been around for a very, very long time. It was originally a mining organization. And like most businesses that come from that heritage, is an organization where technical competence was really valued and respected. Um, and indeed, that's still kind of carried through in some areas of the business where the leadership ethos is around who is the cleverest, most hardworking person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, super clever people, really, really accomplished in their field, become leaders because they're super clever and accomplished mining engineers or analysts.
Mm.
So what became increasingly apparent was that there just really wasn't much of a coaching culture because of that. Why do I need to be able to have coaching conversations? I'm the cleverest person in the room, so, and I'm being very simplistic on purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
Person, but what we started to discover was there was an appetite that was just emerging from the business. It was a little bit like, when you're in a room and the windows are all blocked out and you tear a little bit of paper off the corner of the window and some sunlight comes in, then you started to get other people kind of going, oh, I want a bit of that. Could we take some of the paper off this window as well?
Yeah.
Which I suppose talks a little bit about how we have thought about change and how we've thought about introducing coaching and people development, which is not to say, look, here's a big program, and we're going to come and do this all to you, which is a very traditional way of doing coaching and indeed people development work. Instead, we've said, well, we're just going to do a little bit of experimentation over here. We're going to
Yes.
partner with CoachHub, and we're just going to invite this group of people to see, and then we're going to tell some other people, look, we did this over here, just so you know, it's no pressure on you. We just did this thing, and people
Yeah.
kind of go, ooh, well, we quite like the look of that thing. Can we have some of that thing?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is, and I need to stress it's early days, but we've almost certainly found that there's an appetite there that I don't think I maybe didn't really realize it, but certainly other people I think have been surprised. Kind of now it's there.
Mm-hmm. I like the light through the window analogy. It's something we talk
Yeah.
about quite a lot, is the coaching ripple effect, which is whenever actually one person gets access to a coach and then they hear about it, it sort of spreads throughout the organization, and that's kind of it's like sowing a seed, and then over time it kind of grows, and then we develop it then over time and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reflecting. I think I was talking to you yesterday about I'd just come off a call with one of our people in the consumer end of our business,
Mm-hmm.
who works in talent acquisition, talent development. And of course, that's an interesting business. It's quite small, but it's luxury retail. And people don't think, you say to DeBeers, we're a mining business. I don't think a business that's got like fantastic stores in China selling pieces that start at £5,000 to £10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to this person. I was saying, well, we've done this with CoachHub, and we're planning to do more. And this is what it looks like. And she was visibly getting excited and saying, oh, I want some of that, so it was it's just really rewarding to see that that there is that genuine need there that actually I think very few of us really understood.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also to brings me thinking of another point where we talk about coachee readiness as well, because it's also really critical that the coachees have this relationship and this working alliance with their coach, but that also that energy and that excitement that you've just described is also super crucial to enable that change as well, and actually to embed something like a coaching culture in your organization as well. So when we think about something we discussed last week, Sarah, was the importance of timing when it comes to and instilling change management programs. Can you maybe share some insight around, from your perspective, how
Yeah.
important timing actually is when it comes to implementing a change management program?
And that's a really good point, because actually I was just reflecting on the fact we didn't get it right in some instances.
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember rightly, when you and I first started talking, we were going to actually start with a pool of people, and we'd have two distinct groups. And actually one of those groups was this really quite senior management leadership cadre, and the engagement from them was terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And the timing was just not right. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why you could say it didn't work, but there are also all kinds of reasons why you could say, actually, I learned something really important about how to make things work in the future. So it was frustrating, and we were very lucky that you were tolerant enough to partner with us to look at how we did make it work. You were very tolerant of us. So timing is crucial in terms of bandwidth. So we had a load of senior leaders who just didn't have the bandwidth at that point in time. They were all working very long hours. They just couldn't see the wood for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Timing is also crucial in terms of kind of maturity of thinking around individual or personal responsibility for my development. So what I mean by that, if you're working in quite a hierarchical organization, people, and especially in quite a long-standing organization with a lot of legacy,
Mm-hmm.
people who get to be senior leaders, there is a sense, and I wish I had a better word for this, because this is going to sound pejorative, but I don't mean it to. There's a sense of entitlement. Like, I've got to this level because I'm really good, and do I need a coach, let alone an online coaching platform? Because remember, most of these people are Gen X, if not baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that I use technology, and technology is not a replacement for coaching, it facilitates the coaching.
Mm.
The idea that I use technology in order to have something where, why would I need that? I'm perfectly good enough already, is really, it's tricky. So maturity of thinking around ongoing professional development, being reflective, that's what I'm looking for, introspective
Mm-hmm.
and reflective. That's also really crucial. And then there's a final third thing around timing, which is bringing it, which probably relates to my first point around bandwidth, which is actually bringing it in at the right point to pick people up after some of the kind of chaos has. So when the battles pass by and then people need to start rebuilding, make sure you get at that point, not when they're in the middle of fighting the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one's got time in the middle of fighting the battle. It's like
Their head's somewhere else.
time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would also add, and this is theoretical because I can't talk about it from where I'm in DeBeers at the moment, but actually start to talk about change and the impact before you've even done the change. So what you find in a lot of organizations, they go, God, we need to change. We need to bring around a change initiative. And they see it as a problem to be solved rather than just an ongoing state of being. And they say, well, we'll bring it around. They will have conversations about it. And in my opinion, actually, it's crucial to start teeing people up beforehand. Say, there's a lot of change coming. It's going to be hard. It probably will feel quite uncomfortable. It's part of that process. Let's talk about how uncomfortable it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, and I said this is entirely theoretical, but I've been really interested in a perfect world to actually formulate the change plan and introduce coaching, long before people are in the midst of the battle. But instead, we tend to do things kind of retrospectively, like, okay, we've survived that. Now, how do we help you get back on your feet? It's an insight that potentially might be of use.
No, it is really, really, really useful, I think. It's almost that piece again about readiness and making people aware of what's coming, the
Yeah,
expectation. They sort of help them understand that this is going to be a tough situation, but you have the
yeah,
support there if it's needed, and this is what it might look like. Mm,
yeah. And we had that. I had that experience. There's one part of our business which we call midstream, which is the diamond training bit of the business. They're largely based in Botswana, but there are other parts of the business around the globe.
mhm,
And they were going through that kind of restructure and change curve at a different rate to the rest of the business. And talking to senior leaders there who said, well, why would we engage in this change program? Because we haven't had to do this restructuring yet. And my response to them was, but you're going to do it, right? They're like, yeah, no, we absolutely have to do it. There's the organization's got to, this part of the organization's got to reshape in order to have a future. So could you start to talk about that now? Could you get your people to start talking about how that change might affect them and how they feel about that now?
okay.
Although we did have, in our first pilot, we did have a group of young high potentials who worked with CoachHub, that they got a lot out of it.
Hmm. There was two other points that you mentioned there when you were talking. One was around this perhaps learning or coaching feeling like it's prescriptive, as opposed to coaches arriving at it from like a self-directed approach.
Yeah.
Is this something that you're kind of thinking about at DeBeers? And if so, could you maybe lend insight as to how we can maybe change the mindset around access and learning opportunities?
So I have found that actually, where it works best is to say to people, here's a thing, are you interested? Whether it's coaching or some other intervention, but coaching in particular, because then you get the advocates. They turn up and go, oh, I absolutely want some of that. And then the second adopters kind of go, oh, you've got some of that, that's cool, I want some of that.
So the reason why I asked it, Sarah, is a lot of organizations now are wanting to move towards this self-directed learning where learners within the organization take ownership of what they're actually doing in terms of their own development. Trying to steer away from more of a prescriptive, because it is really that attitude of the people that are embarking on a learning journey, which is going to sort of dictate how well that they succeed, how much commitment are they going to give into it. And I'm seeing more and more of that, more and more conversations with organizations looking to steer towards this self-directed learning approach. And I kind of heard some of that coming through in what you were saying before about people feeling like they're kind of just entitled to it and this parental role that the organization has. Whereas we're trying to like flip the script on that. A lot of organizations are trying to flip the script on that and give people these opportunities like what you're doing at DeBeers. So thinking about the past 12 months, how has the current climate encouraged a change in thinking about leadership at DeBeers?
So I think, in answer to that, I probably would be more comfortable talking about what I've observed in terms of behaviours.
Mm-hmm.
To start on, I suppose, the negative side, I've still seen quite a lot of, but the super clever technical leader saying, well, I just need to work harder, I just need to double down.
Yeah.
But I have also seen, I've seen quite a lot of leadership, and actually from our CEO down. And our CEO is someone who really kind of walks the talk in terms of our values, and actually one of our, so first of all, our primary value is around safety.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have other values, and one of them is about show we care. So there's been a degree of vulnerability which is neither masculine nor feminine, it's humanist.
It is 100%. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, which I don't know if we would have seen that 3 years ago. I don't know if that's so DeBeers has always has had gender parity targets, and Bruce Cleaver, our CEO, is very passionate about essentially ensuring that we have a really balanced and inclusive and diverse workforce,
Mm-hmm.
but really doubling down on that. So for example, and that, by the way, is trickled down through the organisation. So, for example,
Brilliant.
DeBeers has got a small initiative working with artisanal miners in West Africa. It's called Gem Fair. It's about paying fair prices, and you can imagine it's a tough place to do business. And actually, in those countries, there's been tremendous suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and they have DeBeers. So through Gem Fair has been involved in turning up and giving people food parcels. So
Brilliant. Mm-hmm.
the other thing that I think I've seen quite a lot more of in terms of behaviour is an acknowledgement that it's the efforts of the team that get us there.
So if we are thinking around, because I know we spoke a bit about a change in the leadership culture, a change in the leadership style. We've started off small. We want to gear towards more of this coaching style, coaching humanistic style conversations and stuff like that. Are there any plans at DeBeers to maybe spread this farther afield in some of the pockets that we've focused on initially?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a really a plan to. So it's wrapping together all of these things we've talked about. So self-led learning, stuff that's also light touch. We really want to try and be much more nimble around people development, much more nimble, iterative, kind of work at speed, evolve something, deliver it. Won't get it right the first time, acknowledge won't get it right the first time, be opportunistic in terms of looking for things that we could bolt on to improve what we've done. So here's the initial. So it's within the tech world or the software world, it's version 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
To really adopt that kind of model. So a fantastic example is we are in the midst of doing a piece of work for people who are new to leadership. And we talk about those people who go from really trusted, respected individual contributor to team leader. How do we help them? So we've developed a program. It's very, very light touch. It's delivered entirely in-house. We use our subject matter experts. And there's another big thing about how can we be creative and not spend fortunes elsewhere. When we've made people redundant, it would be remiss of us in the extreme to now go and spend £200,000, £300,000, £400,000 on developing something sexy with a big consultancy, global consultancy. And then talking to you, we're like, okay, well, maybe we could also offer to help that extent. Maybe we can also say to them, and a bolt-on option for you is to have some time with a coach, CoachHub.
Something else that I'm hearing from you, Sarah, and a lot of organizations, I think you guys have moved pretty fast in response to the pandemic, and the word used there was nimble. The other word of the moment's agile and agility and stuff like that. How could organizations maybe adjust their thinking? They be more experimental at the moment and sort of try out new things. Is there any advice you could maybe learn around that from just a mindset perspective?
So actually, for me, probably the most valuable thing has been about two things. One is anything should be evolved through a team of people. So a team, and B, a team of people who come from a range of different parts of the business. I think any business that's saying they get together a bunch of learning specialists or HR folks, and they get together in a dark room and say, well, we need to do this and we're going to do that and we'll roll it out like this. It's already working with a whole set of unconscious bias. So I think there's something really important about HR thinking themselves as business people first and HR professionals second, and partnering with people from all kinds of the business, and really thinking about breaking down silos. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's an important part about, because coaching provision often sits with the HR function. So I think there's a really important part about HR saying, well, who we're going to bring in to help us decide how we're going to do this internally. So who are the internal stakeholders who need to tell us? They need to hold the mirror up and tell us about what their perspective is and use that to shape the solution. We've done some of it. I haven't done enough, for sure. And it's my very firm intention to keep doing more and more. So I talked about this frontline leaders or new to leadership program. All of the subject matter experts who are going to be delivering short sessions to our group of learners come from all different parts of the business. So there's a handful of HR folks, but they're people from all over the place who are going to be doing. We're just going to work in partnership with them to help them to make sure that the sessions, the webinars they structure are fairly sort of engaging.
So if you were to advise another people or learning leader that worked in a very kind of hierarchical command and control style organization, if they wanted to try and steer the culture, a flatter, sort of more humanistic style of leadership with maybe democratized access to digital coaching, what sort of advice or insight could you lend?
So I think there's probably something quite important about, ditching. Ask yourself a hard question before you do anything, which is, do I really need a load of very, slick PowerPoint slides, or could I just tell somebody a story?
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. I mean, it doesn't stop you having to do some of the hard legwork around data, because senior leaders want data. They always want to know how you're going to measure this. So don't get too distracted, but try and balance those two sides of the brain. Here's the story imagination bit, and here's the logical structured. This is the feedback loop. This is where we'll gather that data. Here's where we'll assess it and feedback in.
The business side of it.
Yeah, and the business side of it is important, but a bit, business is a combination of, one way or another, both machines and human beings, and so don't forget to tell both aspects of what business is. Businesses you think how much money they put into branding and the stories they tell and their culture, and despite all of that, how much culture just evolves itself. And so, if they get the branding message wrong, how the culture just somehow ends up sticking right through the substrate of this carefully crafted story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a really interesting bit about focusing on authentic stories and marrying it to the story the data that you're using to support your story.
Awesome. So Sarah, we're coming up now to the end. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
So I suppose I would also add something that I know you and I talked about, which is also sometimes about, and it goes back to my theme about being a little bit opportunistic, which is about spotting the opportunity to help somebody. And what I'm referring to there is something that way back, actually, when I was with Element 6, and there was one year that was particularly tough for us, and there were a small group of people who I could see, I could see them physically on a day-to-day basis. The weight of what they were having to deliver and the challenges they were facing were immense.
Mm-hmm.
So Element 6, by the way, had no coaching culture at all. So it's very early on, and I think it was the first year I was with the business. I came from quite a strong background of working with coaches. I could see these folks just on a day-to-day basis. I mean, honestly, it was like the bloody task of Sisyphus, rolling things uphill. And I went to my boss and I said, would you be amenable to me carving out a small amount of money to provide some coaching support for these people? And she was like, what the hell is that going to do? And I sort of knuckled down and said, look, I think this is why, this is what I'll do. And you know, all credit to her. And she was a really great boss, but she skeptically, slightly reluctantly went, okay. And so I brought in a coach that I really knew and trusted, not that long ago, but days pre-CoachHub. And I went to these individuals and I said, I have noticed, and I've noticed what's going on for you. Would you like to work with a coach? And all three of them went in varying degrees of enthusiasm, from hell yes to yeah, I'll give it a try. And from there, we created a culture within Element 6 where we got to a point where people openly talked about, I was having a conversation with my coach, and to people just expecting that actually, you know, having a coach and having coaching conversations was intrinsically part of how I operated as a leader. So what I'm saying within that story is, actually, if you're someone who's got an appetite for coaching, don't think it has to be a great big program. I mean, look at where you can help. You can really genuinely, altruistically help somebody to navigate their world in a more constructive way by something. I mean, really, it's a very small effort with huge returns. And if I can think about every single one of that small group of people that I originally found a coach for and set that up and got that up and running, I'm in touch with them all still. They've all gone from strength to strength. They're all extremely wonderful people, but actually they were at a point in their career where what was happening could have broken them. And I think we've all been in that, you know, points in our life where we've gone, I don't think I can do this anymore. And sometimes the line between succeeding and failing is paper thin. So I would just say, you know, think small, think opportunistically. If that is going to work for you, you know, if there's just a small group of people and you go, let me help you, then you can see some amazing things come out of it. It may not even be something enormous. It might just be two people who in 10 years time look back and go, that helped me get here.
It was the bridge. It helped them get there. Definitely. Nice one, Sarah. Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, as always. If anybody listening today would like to hear more about CoachHub, please feel free to drop me an email, david.coyle@coachhub.io, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, David Coyle. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.